G'day everyone, this is my 34 Ford door pillars and they're a bit tricky. The back of it's pretty easy because that's just a flat piece of metal, and then I've made this outside edge by just folding a little U-channel and then shaping it to the profile of the side of the car, and then I've trimmed the back panel and welded it on. And I've included a right angle fold on the inside, and eventually we'll have like an inner panel which will weld inside it, and it'll have a little recess in the front of it for the upholstery tacking strip to go into. But the trickiest bit is making the front face of it. So this is the driver's side door pillar, so in Australia it's our right hand post. So that mounts on the car, back of the car out that side, front of the car out here, and this is the portion where the door closes into it. So I've come up with this idea to shape a piece of metal. So here's the back edge of a door, and here's the front face of the door post. So what I've got is this recess in here that I've formed with the Pullmax, and it took a little bit of thinking about it to get it all to work. So when it goes together and we've got our hinges in place, the door will close into the little recess, just like that. Now, I looked at this for a long while and I decided that I should be able to form it all in one piece, and I did. Now the problem with the Pullmax is trying to keep it running to the profile you want without it wanting to take over and run straight. And I spend a lot of time making little fences that I will even spot weld onto a panel I'm making, just so the Pullmax will track along in the right spot. And just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, here's part of a wheel arch for a Holden that I'm working on, and here's a little temporary fence that I've just made out of a piece of scrap metal, and I've just folded it 90 degrees, strinker and stretcher, and I've matched it up to the profile. And then when I did this edge here, I spot welded it onto the piece that I was working from. That got the angle of this curve just in a beautiful arc that matched the original. So with the door post, we've got a whole lot of different shapes. We've got this straight piece at the top, and then we've got the portion where it comes out here, sort of where the bead line runs on the car, and then the nice curved section for the bottom of the car. So the more I thought about it, the more I realised I really just need to use the door post for the fence. So I came up with the idea that if I used the opposite side post, so here's the left door post, and here's the face for the right front one, and I bolted them together. And it was like that. Forgot how I did it for a minute. So when that was all bolted together, I ran the tool post on the Pullmax along this face here. And then that let the tooling that was doing the work track along and actually run this profile in here, and then that made the exact same shape as what the edge of the door post was. So when we take it over to the driver's side, we'll trim this edge off and trim this edge off and then butt weld them together, and we'll have our profile. So what I'll do now is I'll just prep this up, because I've got to use the left front panel on the right hand post. So I'll get all that set up together, and then we'll take you over to the Pullmax and we'll run it through. I've just put this together, so we have got the left door post where it faces forward in the car. So here's the pieces with the hinges on it, and it's going to fold down and out, and we've got it bolted to the right door post. Now because of the hinge reliefs, I've actually stacked washers in here so it wouldn't distort it. And originally I'd thought, well, maybe I could either clamp it or spot it through here, but because of these little folds up and down, it would allow the panel to walk a bit, and we could actually distort the panel, so we wouldn't wind up with a straight edge through here, we wouldn't wind up with a curve there, because if we just twist these angles in here a little bit, it'll just destroy our post. So at least this way, bolted each end of the flats, they can't move, and they're the important parts. And we're going to fold right into the hinge relief. So I've cut these in here, and the fold will sit there beside it, and then I'll trim these off later. Now this is an idea that rattled around in my head for a little while before it all came together and all the pieces came into place. And originally I was just going to do it with a stepping die like this and run the door post that matched the side we were doing against the top tool. But because that one's running up and down all the time, I thought, well, that's just going to rattle it around and cause some problems. And then I came up with the idea of using the opposite side post and on the bottom, but then you've got the issue of the panel wanting to rock. So I've wound up making this outer foot to support the outside of the sheet. Now when this machine was used as a nibbler, it would have had something out here, and I had this portion of it, but I didn't have the piece that went inside it. So I made this the other weekend just before I tried making the first doorpost, and it works, but it's a heap of fiddling around because as this post comes up, we've got to retract this one as well. So it's balancing the adjustments. The other problem I had was if I bring these two tools together and lined up how I want the finished fold to be, they're going to wind up shearing the piece of metal off because we've got to bring so much metal down and around the corner. So what I've done is I have spaced them apart of the distance of the step. So as we start working the metal and lifting this post up, we'll also keep increasing it in so that where we start running the Pullmax tooling along the panel, they'll always stay in that spot. So as it folds down and creeps away, we'll bring that post in to close that up, and then we'll get it all to tuck in nicely at the end. So one of those things, thought about it for a while. And the other thing is, I've had this machine for 10, 12 years or so. When I come up with a new set of tools for it, I'll run it through in my mind before I even build them and put them in the machine, and I'll have a fair idea of what's going to happen to my workpiece. Now sometimes you'll have to chase it with the shrinker and stretcher because you'll get a bit of a bow this way or a curl or something like that that you've got to work out as you're going with the Pullmax. On this profile, I couldn't for the life of me work out what it was going to do because we had two folds happening at once. But as it happens, it doesn't change greatly. Where there's a bit of a tight curve, it does curl it a little bit, but all it needed to correct that was just hit it on the anvil and flatten it back out again with the hammer, and it was done in 2 or 3 hammer blows. So because I'm putting two folds in at once, whatever distortion's happening on one is being counteracted by the other, and it actually keeps the workpiece really quite straight. So we'll crank it up and run it through, and then we'll stop and have a look at it each time, and we'll go from there. That's down. So we've done our first pass. So where this line's running along the piece of sheet here, this is the edge that we're going to tuck back in down with the bottom of our step, and that's naturally the top corner there. So that's why I've got the two tools spaced apart. So I'm going to lift this probably 2 or 3 times on this spacing, and then I'll start creeping them closer together and we'll chase these two edges together. So come up half a turn. I like to run this bottom collar just nipped up, just to stop the tool rattling around while it's being worked. So there's a few passes on it, and we're starting to get this shoulder in here now, and this outside edge hasn't actually connected down here anywhere yet, so it's still running out on an angle. But as we come down and we get these tooling closer together, it'll start bringing this fold back the other way. So I'll just adjust it all again, and then we'll move on. Close him up a bit there. And I'll lift that one up a little bit. Okay, we've got probably a couple more little bites on there now, because we've got to get this gap in here down to the thickness of the material, so we get a nice sharp fold and back out the other way. That'll have to come up a little bit. Now we're getting close to our profile now. We've still got an angle running this way, but we're starting to bring this other edge back up. And it's also getting quite tight to push through the machine. So I'm going to put a bit of lubrication on the panel and on the tooling to make it a bit easier to slide it through. Now, with some Pullmax tools, you've got to fight them and hold things in place. But with the design of this one, it's actually sucking itself in tight against the fence. So it's actually working in our favour. So that's a good thing. Okay, it's going to work a bit now. It's going to pull that last little bit in. So we'll get a fair bit of noise out of the head of the Pullmax, and that's just the mechanism in there working and fighting it a little bit. But it's done worse than this before and survived, so I'm not worried for it. It's starting to hook on there too, so it's the other one did the same thing. It was just a matter of holding your mouth right and it'd pop off, but it's just the shape of the tools and the fact that it's got this support post on the back that's locking it in, but we can live with that. That's got our fold tucked in this way. We've just got to come down a little bit tighter and bring this edge up a little bit on the bottom. So I'd say it's going to be another pass just with this wound up a little bit higher on the bottom post, and we'll be there. One more pass. Yeah. I think it's going to take less than 39 minutes. Okay. Might go up a little bit higher. So there's our 1934 Ford doorpost. So a bit of trimming and a bit of welding, and we've got another piece of the puzzle. So get these welded onto the rest of it, and then we can look at the piece on the inside. I'm just getting ready to put our two parts of the doorpost together. And so we've got the piece that we made with the folded edge, and I've trimmed that down to size. And I've got the previous part, and I've done most of the trimming. It needs a little bit of grinding to just get everything to fit in there nicely. And this is the second one. I did the first one before, and when I did the first one I cut straight through past the hinge points, and then I thought about it afterwards, and I thought, well, if I left the little piece of material on here I could fold it up and we'd nearly fill the gap in, and it does. When it comes in, the gap's nearly filled in, but what I will do is weld a piece of material on there, cut it to size so it'll come just up to this edge in here, and then I can just weld along here, weld around the hinge spots, and when it's all ground off it'll be nice. I've still got to trim the back of this away to get it to the right shape, but I want to leave as much material on as possible because it'll stop the weld from trying to straighten the post out. If we have a look down here, we can see where I've actually had to heat the post and straighten it a little bit. The length of the weld from one end to the other did actually straighten it a little bit, and that sort of pulls in where the bead line's going to be on the car. And what I really want is to keep that nice 1934 Ford look alive, where you've got that nice swoopy curve to the body and then the straight piece to the top of the doorpost. So where it had pulled in, it was actually sucking the side of the car in and flattening it out. And the trouble with our poor old Coupe Utes is they've got a tendency to look very slab-sided and flat, so I want this nice curve archy side to make the side of the Ute really come to life. So we're nearly ready to go. I can weld that together, but I will grab this one. This is the right hand side one, so that gives you an idea of how it all comes together. And like I say, on the other one I folded a couple of little pieces at right angle, welded those in there to fill in those gaps, and I'm hoping to do away with that on this post. And The inside edge is trimmed almost to shape. I've left a little bit of spare material there, and we've still got to make an inside liner which will fit in here. But prior to that, we've got to put the insert nuts in place for the door hinge to actually screw into, and they've got to be caged so that we can actually adjust the doors a little bit. So they'll have oversized holes in here, a nut plate in there which is caged that'll move around a little bit, so if we loosen the screws off we can adjust the door in and out or up or down a little bit in there and then lock it up with the screws. So that is starting to be a 1934 Ford doorpost. I'm Rob Teal, thank you for watching.